Good day, everyone. I am Charles Julia.
And I am Jezza Amores, and we will be your moderators for today's discussion.
We are all gathered here today to discuss about the not so new, yet ever relevant topic about climate change. And we are also gathered here today and joined here today by the representatives of three different countries, namely Africa, Australia, and Japan. They will be discussing later on regarding how climate change is and continues to affect their respective country.
Yes, and it's truly a pleasure to have you all here, and we're looking forward to listen and learn from what our guest speakers will share to us today. But before we lend the floor to our representatives, Charles, would you kindly explain to us what we will expect for today's discussion?
Yeah, so now I know that we all keep hearing about the issue of climate change here and there. Well, it is already a long issue without any concrete solution or progress to completely end it. And such is the reason why it is still being discussed up to this day. Now, climate change refers to the long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns, from shifting weather patterns that threaten food production and economic activities and lifestyle, to rising sea levels that increases the risk of calamitous flooding. The impacts of climate change are global as a whole in scope and unprecedented in scale.
So, what causes such issues, and how does it affect us globally?
Okay, so climate change can be caused by various reasons, and some of them are deforestation, improper waste management, burning of coal, and even industrialization. Now, deforestation makes a specified area to be more prone to land disasters since that there are now lesser trees that give resilience to it. Now, plastic bags, straws, and styrofoam clog our drainages and canals due to improper waste management and causes flood. Now, the burning of coal causes to release a number of airborne toxins and pollutants, and even industrialization is mainly due to a large population, which leads to an or increased product demand. And more production then means more harmful emissions are being released. Now, climate change then results into different effects, such as hotter temperatures, more severe storms, increased drought, and even endangering certain species of animals and health risks.
Okay, thank you, Charles. And with that, let us now have Ms. Zauda ABDURASID, the representative of Africa, to share to us the situation of their country.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Amores and Mr. Sulia. So I will be tackling about the extreme drought that the Africa is currently experiencing. So Africa has made a little contribution to climate change, emitting only a small percentage of world emissions. However, it may be already the world's most susceptible region as droughts, floods, and catastrophic locust invasions are among the most common threats or effects that they are experiencing. Extreme weather like widespread drought is causing economic losses among the farmers in Africa. Although they have been experiencing drought cycles for thousands of years, but as time go by, this drought cycle intensifies as global warming arises due to climate change. So what are these drought cycles? These are the predictable repetitions of wet and dry periods in which it occurs in a specific region. There are two types of droughts. First is the short and often annual drought cycle. Africa experiences these cycles at different intervals, meaning they experience little or no rainfall each year. The second one is the long drought cycle. These are much more complex because they depend on a complicated balance between atmospheric and climate variables. Annual humidity variations are causing these prolonged periods of drought lasting many years and sometimes decades. What causes the African drought cycles? These African drought cycles are partly caused by geophysical phenomena that make the continent's humidity fluctuate. Unfortunately, in addition to these phenomena, emissions of greenhouse gases from human activities have led to serious droughts amplified by global warming. Another problem besides the climate issue is related to the wildfires sweeping across Africa. These fires dry the air and release vast quantities of CO2 or carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. aggravating the local and global problem. As the atmosphere gets warmer, the relative humidity in the African regions decreases and the drought period becomes longer and more severe. As a result, rising ocean temperatures cause more extreme weather changes, resulting in greater precipitation. Ecosystems are also affected when a region experiences a prolonged or persistent drought, and agricultural and farming activities are greatly affected with subsequent direct social and economic impacts, particularly in regions still highly dependent on the primary sector. And in the international community, they must act to provide or prevent a full-blown disaster. Most importantly, Africa needs long-term solutions to be able to adapt to the changing climate. Also, the developed countries has also the is also responsible for climate change. They should also increase their support in order for this region to adapt. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. ABDURASID. Well then, let us proceed with the representative of Australia, Ms. Ayeshia MESINA.
Thank you, Mr. Sulya, and good day to you all. It is quite nice to see that even today, there are still people who are willing to expand their knowledge and awareness towards climate change by means of listening to online discussions such as the one we are having today. So far today, as the representative of Australia, I would like to share you all how climate change had affected the lives and economy in this country. This 2022, Australia has gotten a low performance when it comes to combating climate change, and one of the causes of it is due to the human activities. It has caused emissions of greenhouse gases and aerosols, mm, as well as land use and land conversion practices due to the nation's heavy reliance on fossil fuels because they see it as a primary source of energy, and in particular, the dominant role of coal is an emissions intensive fuel in the production of electricity. Exported fossil fuel emissions are currently representing around 3.6% of global emissions, and in 2017, Australian coal and gas exports produced around 2.9% and 0.6% of global carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion. Then, aside from the greenhouse gases caused by human activities, another major effect of climate change in Australia is the rising sea temperatures, wherein the Great Barrier Reef is at greater risk of heat stress and coral bleaching as well as ocean acidification. When we say ocean acidification, it mostly pertains the reduction in the potential hydrogen of the ocean over an extended period of time. This is caused primarily by uptake of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Another alarming climate change in Australia is their fire weather. This is when there is an abnormal increase in temperatures with the increase in the length of the fire weather season due to extreme heat events and severity of drought. I would also like to state that there is a similarity between Australia and Philippines when it comes to what they experience in climate change, and that is due to human activities. Both countries experience an increase in greenhouse gas concentrations due to continuous burning of fossil fuels that is caused by human and economic activities. Then they both have the transition of land use in which changes from greener fields to buildings. So the Philippines is much better off than Australia in terms of CCPI. The Philippines is ranked at 23 out of 64 countries, while Australia is at 59th in the CCPP this year 2022. And that ends my part of the discussion. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. MESINA. And lastly, let us have Ms. Andrea Rosales to share the situation of Japan.
So thank you, Mr. Sulya. So good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Rosales, and I'm the representative of the Japan. So climate change poses a threat to the world. For example, a rise in temperature can cause significant ice melting in the poles, making the world unstable and resulting in numerous natural disasters, such as tsunami in South Asia and earthquakes around the world. And because of this climate change, there are a lot of factors or impacts that affect a single country, like social, economic, and environmental. So in Japan, in the geological aspect, Japan is prone to earthquakes, volcanoes, and hot springs due to its location where many oceanic and continental plates met. And if you recall the Great Sendai earthquake or Japan earthquake and tsunami of 2011, or in March 2011, an 8.9 magnitude earthquake released the worst tsunami that Japan has ever experienced. And this tremendous earthquake, societal issues have arisen, resulting in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people. While economic impact, many highways or roads have been destroyed, affecting the transportation process, and the Fukushima nuclear power plant has been damaged, and leaving a certain sections of Japan without power for almost a week. And especially the economic cost of this disaster, which has reached 6.5 billion yen in damages, which is four times the size of Japan's national budget. However, they were able to properly restore the land over the course of 6 years, resulting in an entirely new city. And lastly, there is a environmental impact where the earthquake affects Fukushima's radiation, which might hurt people's health and affect the environment of neighboring countries. So in Philippines, also in natural disaster hit the Philippines as well, including volcanic eruption, tropical cyclones, and floods, which are also common in Japan because both countries are considered disaster-prone areas due to their geographical location on the Pacific Ring of Fire. In the Philippines, if you recall, Typhoon Yolanda hit the Philippines in November 2013. And it was one of the strongest tropical storm ever recorded, and it was effect on the country's social, economic, and environmental system also. So to sum up, everyone can be held responsible for climate change. Creating long-term government policies with good governance, as well as long-term international assistance, can be an effective method to mitigating climate change. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you as well, Ms. Rosales. So once again, I would like to thank our representatives present today for sharing the situation of their represented country. Now, to share her thoughts on our discussion, may I call on to my co-moderator to give us her conclusion for today's discussion.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you so much for our guest speakers. Yes, it is certainly a wonderful learning experience for all of us to have these amazing speakers to share and let us know that what is currently happening around us, especially when they shared to us today, is also what our country, the Philippines, is also experiencing. We too are also experiencing climate change that is caused by human activities, in which affects the overall lives of the people, especially those who are the least responsible for this existing crisis. Such reckless human activities would result to greenhouse gases that are caused by burning fossil fuels, which can have an effect to extreme weather, food supply disruption, and increase of forest fire. Also, to point out that most of the lands here are being replaced with buildings and factories. Climate change also affects the economy of the country. Extreme heat can labor the productivity, harsh typhoons and cyclones and other forces of nature can also destroy the lives of people. Some are left homeless and some lose their only source of income, leaving them to poverty. So let us now proceed to the question and answer portion. Charles, if you may.
Okay, so thank you for that, Jezza. So now we have some simple questions for our representatives today. So starting off with Ms. ABDURASID. So for you, what are the responses or actions of your country have towards climate change?
So the current drought is projected to become the worst in decades. There is a need for a long-term solution for the region, which is continuously hit by climate change-related events. But for now, we can help locals affected by the drought with essentials such as the provision of clean drinking water, hygiene and sanitation, food and cash assistance, emergency health, and livelihood support. We can also use technology to provide drip irrigation and solar-powered electricity, which could be applied in drought-stricken countries like Africa. However, there are also more low-tech options such as tree planting and switching away from drought-sensitive crops like maize to more resilient ones such as cassava, which we believe could also make a difference.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Zauda. And for our last question, Miss Andrea, if you would, what are your suggestions in order to fight climate change?
So my suggestion in order to fight climate change is the first step is to stabilize the global greenhouse gas emissions, and especially government has essential to find a efficient way of transportation or better building codes, and to put larger price on fossil fuels and to forcing many to use an alternative energy sources. And I think we must work together to fight this climate change. Also, to take care of the environment so we cannot experience a larger effect of these um, disasters.
Okay, thank you so much for your wonderful answers. So, again, the overall topic of climate change is something that we should really take seriously since it really affects us and the future generations if we continue to mishandle the situation. Everyone can be held responsible for climate change. Hence, why this would really require the full cooperation of every single one of us across the globe helping one another in order to solve climate change. One step for change is this. Here we are now forming a roundtable discussion, and I also believe that there are other groups of people doing the same thing, forming seminars or webinars, events, TED Talks, and more, sharing the same concern and goals as us in order to spread awareness, especially to the youth, that climate change is no laughing matter. For again, as we all know, climate change is still a recurring problem that every country across the globe is experiencing and that many have been trying to find solutions to lessen it.
That is right. So thank you for that, Jess. So with that, our discussion now fully ends. We would like to thank you all for joining us today. We sure do hope that you were able to be more aware on how climate change affects other countries. And we should also come up with our own solutions to prevent it from worsening any further. And again, thank you all for joining us, and we do hope on seeing you again for yet another discussion. Thank you.